Okay. This is a meeting of the Southborough Stewardship Committee, and I'm calling it to order at 6:35 p.m. I'm going to take a roll call. Brett Peters.
I'm here.
Kevin Farrington.
Here.
Kat McKee.
Present.
And Joyce Greenleaf chairs here. Freddie cannot join us tonight. So I don't want to overly burden any one person, but I am probably will need some help with the minutes. Yes, Kat.
I'll do minutes.
Oh, you can do it? Okay, thanks so much. And our first order of business is going over the minutes from last time for any corrections or edits. So anyone have corrections or edits?
I didn't. I was just amazed that Kat was able to do that while we were sitting in the meeting.
She's a multitasker, Kat. She's amazing. When I used to do them, I would be proud of myself for getting them done within 2 weeks.
It's tricky.
So did anybody see anything to be corrected? All right.
Looks good to me.
So a motion to approve the minutes as submitted in a second.
Moved. Motion to approve October 24th, 2022 minutes.
And
Second.
all in favor? Brett?
Favor?
Okay, Kevin
Yes.
and Kat.
Yes. And who seconded that? Was that you, Kevin?
That was me.
That Brett. Okay, thank you.
And I also agree, so the motion passes and we can put those away. So first order of business, that was something that hasn't been on the agenda the last 2 times as we focused on some other priority items, but Town Forest is also a priority for us. So Kat, what's happening at Town Forest? Or anyone?
Yes, so I'm sorry, I'm a little disheveled. I just walked in the door and
Yes.
so I don't have my things pulled up, but
Oh,
I
do you want me to circle back to it later?
oh no, I can pull things together quickly. So basically the Town Forest, so the question I have for the committee is the Trails Committee has some money, ARPA money, that we can use to build some boardwalks and such for the Town Forest in areas where it's wet or it gets muddy during the wet season and stuff, and the boardwalks would serve to protect the trail from more erosion and such. And I think the question came up, would we have to go before conservation? I believe we would, but I wanted to talk to the committee about that project, and I have a map that I can show you of roughly where the location would be, so you have a sense of that. But I did want to understand if the committee would be open to doing something like that next year. There's no specific timeline other than ARPA money has a timeline, but I don't think we're going to hit it. So I don't need to repeat what specifically that is. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of see if that is something that the committee would be open to.
So this would be kind of like where that where the existing boardwalks are to fix those up, and then where that plywood is on the trails.
Yes, those are 2 of the locations that would need. I'm trying to think where I put them. That's 2 of the locations that would need the boardwalks. There's a couple of, if you remember, Joyce, on the nature hike we did with Dan, there were a couple of crossings where it was a little bit tricky. People were rock hopping
Oh, that's right. That was close to the road, right?
Right. And so those two locations could use some, you know, either a boardwalk or maybe some more rock work that would provide a better crossing for people, a safer crossing, and also, again, to prevent erosion.
And would we, so we have the funds for it, would we look for a scout troop or something like that, or just use the funds to hire somebody to do it?
I think it depends on the cost, what the cost ends up being. Because if, you know, it is a good scout project, not an Eagle Scout project, because they raise funds. I think, Brett, you might have brought that up last time, or maybe Kevin did. So it would be more of a perhaps a community project. Like I think they do community service projects. We'll dedicate some time to that. I've now found the documentation so I can share it. So it could be either or, but you know, if it's I don't know how much, if it's going to cost, you know, a lot of money to do that. We don't have a ton of funds, so then we can make that decision at that point. So what screen am I sharing right now?
So I see the Southborough Town Forest Boardwalk project screen.
Great, because
And
I
it
have
just-
my passwords on the other screen and that would not.
Okay. So you did not share your passwords.
Okay,
I'm
good.
just getting myself oriented. Oh, okay. Now I'm oriented.
Yeah, so this side for everybody's orientation, this side is Town Forest, the other is Breakneck Hill, right? And this map is actually, we'll give credit to Sudbury Valley trustees, made the original map, and we modified it a little bit to update Breakneck Hill pieces. So we have since, you know, put in names to the trails, and where you see a little zigzag are my proposed locations, right? So starting with Salamander Meander, that already has a boardwalk that an Eagle Scout did well before my time. And so after that boardwalk, you know, that trail kind of gets very wet throughout the spring. And Joyce, you may remember during our nature hike, I think, or one of our site visits, there was a couple that went down that trail and then they turned right around and came back. And it was because it's too wet, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
the usability of the trails aren't available to folks when it is wet. And it does, you know, create more erosion when people are walking on it regardless. So
yeah, it's a good amount of boardwalk that would have to happen, I think.
yeah. And yeah, so either do we do one long boardwalk or is it sections? I think that's a TBD depending on the layout of the ground. And then, you know, Freddie had mentioned, and this isn't necessarily covered with this project, but if there were extra funds or we put it on a list later, the trail access at Bay Path off of Woodland, which is just down the road from Salamander Meander, which I love these names. We can call the trails by those names so we know where we are. That is a bit of a steep slope. So there may be an opportunity there to kind of build in some stairs or something just to make that crossing a little safer. And then that also crosses a little intermittent stream, I'll call it, because sometimes it's water, sometimes it's not. That's a consideration. And then further down, these two locations, if you see my mouse moving around on Witch Hazel Way, those are the two, Joyce, I was referring to that currently have water. You know, there's some rocks that people can rock hop, but, you know, for safety and other reasons, they should be improved. And then along here, there's an existing plywood that's, you know, over a little area that isn't always wet, but that's, you know, now deteriorated enough to be something that we should consider replacing.
Yeah, I get nervous every time I step on it.
Yeah, and it's plywood, so it gets very slick and moldy, so it's a hazard of sorts. And then Huckleberry Way, you know, we had an unsolicited volunteer put down some pallets to help with the crossing, and so that is, we need to do something in that area. That's a little bit more involved there. So what we have for funds might not cover all of this, and that's fine, but if we could, you know, contribute, if the trails, and I say we, the Trails Committee, if we could contribute in some way, funding to help with this, we do have some some money to do that. As far as XX dollars, don't have that number quite yet. We're still working out how that money will be allocated based on the project scope submitted. But yeah, so I wanted to put it out there and see if the committee is interested, and I would volunteer, to work with whoever to get quotes or to talk to the scouts or, kind of work that in. It might be a little bit of both, right? We have a scout do one project and then maybe we hire someone else to do another project and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was just gonna suggest that depending on the funding, you could slice and dice it different ways. If there's some that's yeah, because any couple of those pieces of red zigzags would be appropriate. I mean, all of them could be one scout project, but they're supposed to raise their funds. So if we took on a few with those funds, but couldn't take them all on, just slice and dice it differently.
Yeah.
I do think that the stewards would probably want to weigh in. I know there's been concerns some about like the slippery wood on the boardwalk, and there's things I think they can do to either coat it or put some sort of mesh on it that makes the traction a little bit better, especially yeah, we're in wet spots where that traction really matters.
A couple of things that I've seen used and are the effectiveness is, it varies. One option is there's and I don't know if you can apply it to existing wet wood, like it might be too deteriorated at this point. I mean, that boardwalk is still in good shape on Salamander Meander, but it's like an anti-slip grip strips type thing, or we've seen carvings in the wood, so it's not like just a slick surface. It's kind of got some dip to it,
Some
or
texture.
Yep. And so there are some of those options that I think when we do put down any kind of wood, that we should consider that as something that we also include.
Yeah. Do the other stewards have questions or concerns?
Is this is this is this all at once, or is this kind of a phase thing, or would we just say we're going to do all the zigzag? What do you have, about 6 on there or something like that? Would we do all these?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I don't think so. We would have to, that's going to depend on the cost of lumber, who's available to do stuff. So I think it might end up being phased because there are quite a number of these, like if we take the stairs out of it, because that's a little bit different than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 locations. So it depends, I think, but wanting to be very respectful out of historical experience, that taking on too much isn't going to work for the committee, because we have, multiple properties that we work on and want to make sure that this initiative doesn't oversee or overtake like the time commitment that's involved. So I think we would want to discuss exactly how much time or effort we want to, as it's balanced with the management of Breakneck Hill.
Right. And also, is it Trails that's overseeing it? Is it us? Do we need to come together and figure that out?
Oh, I'm fairly 100% sure it would be Stewardship's, Stewardship oversees the town forest, and Trails would be collaborating under the Stewardship umbrella because you oversee the property.
Right.
We're interested in partnering with you on the project and helping to fund it, what we can fund. And that's just, that's kind of how we see it. And we're happy to take leadership, as I serve on both committees, but everything would go before the stewardship, get voted on and by the stewardship and approved by the stewardship. That Trails is not trying to take over. They just want to help.
Yeah, and I wasn't implying that.
No, I know. I just want to articulate so there's no confusion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other stewards have questions about this?
I guess the question is, if you could only do 2 or 3 of them, are there any obvious ones that would pop to the top of the list as far as priorities?
Yeah, priorities. I think Well, I guess a priority would be, I would think that Salamander Meander is a priority because we saw two people not be
Yes.
able to use that trail, right?
Yeah,
Right
I
now-
would say the entrances, like the two
Yeah.
entrances and then that
Yeah.
piece of plywood.
Yeah, because right now you can get through the other places, but Salamander you can't when it's wet and it's difficult coming off a Bay Path, the steepness of that trail. And then the plywood is getting very worn. It's concave, it's dips in, so you don't really love, you would jump it if you could.
Yeah, I would agree with those priorities, having a welcoming, safe feeling entrance. So people don't walk in a certain number of feet and say, oh, forget this.
Salamander
then-
Meander is the closest to parking too, right? So, or the bigger parking
Yeah.
lot, so.
Yeah,
Okay. So it sounds like we're open to it, that we
Yep.
need a little bit more information on quotes and stuff. And then I guess I would ask, so I'm happy to do that, but we can prioritize it as such, like, it's probably, I'm not going to be able to bring anything to the committee until, it depends on our January meeting. If our meeting is the first 2 weeks in January, probably not. If it's the last 2 weeks, that's maybe a little more realistic, or into February. I'm just being very realistic with the commitments. And then I would ask if anyone, I have some connections to a couple of the scouts, 92 troop 92 and troop 1, but I don't know if Brett or Kevin, you have also connections that you might want to reach out to, so that we're dividing and everyone's participating as much as they want.
Yeah, I could talk to, I'd worked with some scouts for a SOLF thing last couple of weeks ago. So and they were pretty helpful. So that went pretty well.
Now, those scouts, were they Cub Scouts or boy, like?
They were, yeah, that's a good point. They were Cub Scouts. So yeah, I don't know the level of skill that's needed for this. This is probably a Boy Scout, not a Cub Scout thing. I'm saying,
Yeah, I would recommend it. If not, then it will end up being the parents of the Boy Scouts.
Right, yeah.
Which they often do participate, as we all know.
Yeah.
So we try to give them credit because they're a big part of it too. But yeah, so if you do you have contacts to the Scouts? Because I'm happy, the older one,
I don't for the older boys right now. No.
Okay. So I do, and I've talked to both groups, so worked with them. So I'm happy, if you want to be involved, I'm happy to copy you. Or I'm not trying to volunteer you. What I'm trying to avoid is this is cat only project. So I want to who would like?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, if you want to CC me, I'd be happy to be part of it. That'd be great.
And then it's also information sharing and contact development. So if you ever needed, in the future, you'd have that established contact. So in a way, it helps decentralize those who do have contacts in case, anything were to happen and we have a shift in people. We try to do this on the Trails Committee. So there's always 2 people involved in something in case.
That makes sense.
So I don't mean to volunteer you or put you on the spot.
and we mentioned earlier that we thought this would be something to go before Concom, but that would be much closer, that would be much later than now.
I think so, because I think what Concom, based on my experience going in front of them for certain questions, that they want to see plans, they want to understand what you're doing and having a better picture of how that would work. And Kevin, you can weigh in on this since you serve on that commission. But I think they like to see more than we'll be ready to be, we'll need to, we'll need to talk as a committee first and then make sure we have the right plan and then go before Conservation Commission.
I haven't been on that long, but it does seem like, we want to look at something, understand where wetlands are and, make sure, we're trying to steer as far away from them as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, great, that's exciting. It's great you guys got some funds for important work like that.
Thank you for your time.
Anything else?
No, I guess I could show some pictures.
Oh,
of
yeah,
some
yeah, those are great
Cool.
pictures.
of how they're kind of
Stairs
very
don't look
simple.
easy. Huh?
they don't look easy. They're not. They're not that. Actually, we did, there was a scout before my time, did a set of stairs, and they were a long set of stairs. We don't need a long set. We just need a few. But it was a big undertaking on Route 30 on the Sudbury Reservoir
Mhm.
Trail. So that's certainly an Eagle Scout type project. But just these bog bridges are pretty straightforward and not as difficult, pretty, simple layout. And what I liked about this picture is, these, because in some cases there may be, you don't want to interrupt the flow. So these are some alternatives to being able to do that. So, yeah, so that's all. I'll stop sharing. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So if there's nothing else on town forest, I'll move on to shed. Okay, so Freddie has a better update than me, but I think last time we talked, there was a vote to approve us to spend up to a certain amount. And I think the latest estimate was about in around 13,000. And Melissa is going to help us get some additional quotes that you have to do when you spend certain amounts of town money. And then there will also be an expense associated with the prep and the dismantling of the old shed. So all told, we probably still will be in that window of that amount of money. And I think that might be the only update because she isn't here did she send around the design bit of it? Okay. Well, anyway, it would be a split shed. Community Gardens would have a little bit more space than they have in the existing shed, and we would have separate entrances and a partition. And it would be nice looking because it would have some windows to reduce the massing effect. So, but nothing fancy like a cupola. Because that would be inappropriate. Okay, so that was a quick one. Okay, so I don't know if any of you had a chance to pick up or print it out yourself, the beautiful art map. It was emailed a couple of weeks ago, maybe closer to the end by me. I forwarded from Claire Dacey. So if it's in your email, it would be maybe around the first week of November or so.
Monday the 14th. This one I got it from up here on my other screen.
Monday the 14th. And you can, if you're around sometime, Kat, Melissa did print out a couple of them so we could stop by. I was gonna, bring them over, but like many people I now have COVID in the, I haven't tested positive, but I have COVID in my house. So switch to Zoom, which on a night like tonight, frankly, I'm okay to be home.
My wife and I both have it right now, so it works out. We'd have to do it anyway.
Yeah, right. This is a first draft of something we contracted for last year. It will be eventually something that would live on our kiosk. It could be downloadable from our website. We would own this artistic rendering of the Breakneck Hill.
Do you want me to share screens? I have it up.
Yeah, sure. If you can. So this is our first opportunity to add features or offer corrections to what this map looks like. So for example, I think a feature should definitely be, and the features we do can be a lot of different things. They can be little call out boxes like a legend, or actually paint, something that's more painted on. So she did the bee, which is kind of like Bombus fervidus, which is awesome. And I think maybe some other features we might want to call out would be the Beecology Garden.
Yes.
Um,
And the summit, so.
Yeah.
and the summit, yeah. Which is hard for me to recognize on, yeah.
Yeah, so this is the
Yeah, there's no
summit.
real way to tell any elevation at all, right? It's kind of,
Right, flat.
but-
And that-
Yeah.
okay, that might be okay, because it's hard to put the topographical lines in there. Joyce, do you know what this is? It looks like a big mountain.
I thought that might be Harding Botanical.
I think it's the office building on Route 9 that's set back in the
Oh,
woods there.
yeah, I think you're right, because Harding Botanical would be over on Breakneck Hill Road. I see
Yeah.
Harding Botanical now.
Is this the community garden? Do you see my mouse?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
so Beecology is not represented at all.
Right, so this is botanical garden. I mean, this is the Harding,
Harding.
and this is where the Beecology garden would be.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
would recommend we call out because that is an important feature that we've invested heavily
huge.
in. So
Yeah.
I would recommend Beecology Garden.
And what about the triangle? I forget what she calls, what, wildlife meadow, what? do you
Freddie's
call
Folly.
it?
That's what she calls the pollinator gardens on Wildflower Hill. But I
This
think
is
you could still
Wildflower
call
Hill.
that Wildflower Hill.
I think so, because you walk up the hill and it's wildflowers everywhere on that one side.
And actually the parking is not super clear there.
Thank you.
Do we
I was
wanna
like,
put-
where is parking? And I think it should be, even though it's not a feature, but for orientation purpose, people look for that. And we have the kiosk there, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I'm terrible with maps, so it's harder for me to get oriented. Should we have, like we could call out the quarry, or we could
Oh, yeah.
do, you
yeah,
know,
the quarry,
this-
I think that's what this is, right?
Right. It doesn't show
But-
any trail actually getting up close to it. You can get closer than that, right?
Right. And that is a beautiful rock feature
Yeah.
on the
yeah,
property.
so we may need to adjust the trails on there.
Yeah. Yeah, because if people don't know about it, it's not like it's a long way out of the way. So it's worth it for them to take 5 minutes to walk over there, you know?
And there's
yeah.
some, it's a pretty trail because there's some interesting trees and ferns and a lot of woodland aster. And there's some kind of special tree in there that I find every time. I think it's called ironwood. It's kind of cool.
So this over here where it looks like I'm assuming it's wetlands, but for me, I'd be like, ooh, is there a pond over there? I'd like to go see that pond. That kind of looks like,
Isn't that
pond.
the trail to the town forest? Because that's one of the things that jumped out at me when I looked at this, is that the main connection over to the town forest is not really called out.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
oh, that is where that is the vernal pool.
That's the vernal pools, and we may want to call it that. And we
Yes.
don't know if it's certified. Freddie will know.
There's a sign in there. There's a post, like an old Eagle
Yeah,
Scout. They did
It's
that.
very
Yep.
old. Yeah.
Yep, and you're right, Kevin, I think the trail should be highlighted here. And I know this is a Breakneck Hill map, but would it be possible to just say town forest over here in the corner so that people would know that it could connect, right?
Yeah,
It doesn't have to
I'm-
highlight any trails on the town forest, but just say town forest.
Yeah, I'm keeping a running list. So far we have things, to potentially call out, and probably we can't let it get too busy,
Right.
right?
Yep.
But so Beecology Garden, the Summit, Wildflower Hill, parking, quarry, connection to town forest and vernal pool. So those would be some things that we could go back to her. And I could do that. I could go back to her and we could see, what's within our budget to be able to add. Or she, as the artist, she would have recommendations as well about, how much is too much to call out. So
Would
maybe,
it make- Yeah, would it make sense, Joyce, because the property is managed for grass, for nesting birds? In some way, do you have grasslands there, but is there any opportunity to kind of call out that feature? Because it is an important,
yeah, kind of like she did the bee, we could do like a little painting, she could paint like a bobolink or something.
what about all right, this is too much, but the kestrel box, because then.
I know, I thought of that too. Should the kestrel box be called out? But I think probably we just have to be selective.
Right, in the list of priorities, I think that's the lower one.
Yeah. So I added in my notes, bird, bobolink. And like if she's got the bee down in, actually another thing to call out with a little painting could be like a particular native flower that's there.
Very good,
know,
yeah.
like we couldn't do all of them, but I mean,
And
I think there's probably more ideas than we could
Yeah.
do.
Can the bee be named in some way? Like, is that valuable? And same with the flower, again, obviously balancing what we can and can't do, but a picture of a bee is less, educational than maybe a picture of the bee with a little bombus fur, fur.
This is Freddie, so I'm gonna take it.
Oh, of course.
Freddie? Oh, she hung up. I don't think I picked up quick enough.
Do you want to try her back?
No, well, I think she's at the hospital, so
Maybe it was
I think she texted and she said that she's very shook up. So what naturally after an accident.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking about that on the ride home about just it's such a nasty night.
Yeah.
It's hard to see.
So if we had to choose only like say 4 things, would it be summit? Like my 4 might be a bird painting, the summit, because even just labeling summit tells somebody that there's some elevation.
And that can help them orient the map as they're looking at it.
Yeah.
I think parking is probably, it's a little bland, but it's pretty functional. I think we need to call it the parking a little more.
And I think
Yeah.
ecology is certainly
Yeah.
a priority. Over if we had to pick ecology over the wildflower hill, I think ecology might
Yeah.
be higher priority.
Yeah, I agree on that one. Yeah, Ecology instead of Wildflower Hill, if we had to choose.
Although I like both.
And
I think I'd say parking and town forest, but that's me.
yeah, town
Yeah, those
forest,
are
I
both-
like.
Yeah, we need to say town forest, but the trail has to be called out too.
Yeah. Yeah, and right now, there isn't that many words on it.
Yeah.
So like to have a trail to town forest does not seem like that it would clutter.
Right.
I think the fear, and it would seem like right under where, like if you move the bee up to under Breakneck Hill, and then you could do like even a little flower and a bird down in the other corner, or vice versa. So I do think that there's room for those things being called out. I guess because ecology is small, like would the letters get too small?
It's less than ideal, but to have a call out, and have a line, but that then gets a little messy. So I hear what you're saying. Maybe the bee sits on top of where ecology garden is as a marker. 2 birds with one.
Yeah, part of me wants to see the bee underneath the word breakneck, and then do a bird and a flower down in the lower right.
Mhm.
Or even a bird in the grasslands.
I think a bird in the grasslands would be great. And it's kind of like an icon, right? So you're not saying what it is, but you're using images, and that actually makes it, well, I won't get into that.
And that one I'd say is a nice idea. I'd leave that up to the artist if they thought that would fit or would look out of place in the because the bee kind of fits with the north. It looks like part of the compass, whereas the bird may look really cool. It may not. I don't have a good enough design eye to know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Yeah.
I don't love this building rock thing. It just looks like I would go looking for a rock. And if it's supposed to be a building, and I don't know if I love it being
It
there
kind
at
of looks
all.
like it's a plaque almost, like it's like a sign or something.
I love the map, so I'm not being critical, but we are talking
Right.
about stuff.
This is
So-
maybe nitpicky, but is there a trail up in the top right that connects out to Woodland? Isn't there that little triangular spot that goes out? You pass it, so you walk it up, you pass
I
the
think
peak,
it's all grown. Oh, I know what you mean.
you can turn right and go out to Woodland there, can't you?
Can you go all the way to Woodland though? It might be all grown in, that trail.
Oh, is
There's
this that
where the gate
So
is
from-
on Woodland.
Right before the dotted line starts. So there's the dotted trail at the top. Right as you're about to walk into it, right there. Can't you go to the right? Over towards Woodland? Isn't there a little path there that makes a little triangle?
Is that the one that had the sign on it that said, this is now a trail? That was going down to where the
Oh, that's where the
neighbor is mowing?
encroachment
Yeah,
is.
Oh, maybe that's where that is. Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, I see. Yeah, this is because these are supposed to be neighbor houses, right? And so this is where they were mowing.
I think they were mowing more below there to that where it looks mowed.
Yeah, that's where the encroachment is more down there.
That's what I thought. All right,
Is
well,
she
this gives
repainting
us,
a new version every time, or
what's that?
is she repainting a new version if we give feedback, or is this like is this digital or?
So
No,
this, my understanding of the process is that she provides this draft and then we give input and figure out like what needs to change. And I think we can have multiple back and forths with her, but I imagine every single one adds costs. So I sort of hoping for a one back and forth.
I bet this is digital.
What's that, Kat?
I think it could be digital. I can't imagine her.
Yeah, you probably know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she's like gonna be a jerk about it. In fact, we could probably have her invite her to our next meeting and say, okay, like I could give her the feedback and talk to her, and then she, if we wanted, we could have her at a meeting. I just thought for the first time that we talk about it, maybe not invite her.
I agree, and I think we need Freddie here before we invite her to give
Well, it
her
was
feedback.
Freddie's vision for sure.
So I think it's important that Freddie gets to speak and share her perspective before we meet with the artist. So there may be another meeting before we do that.
Yeah.
Unless you think that can be incorporated.
Yeah.
Offline.
So, if it's all right, I think I had been kind of the designated contact with Claire for the last go around or two, Claire being the artist. And if it's all right, I will present these ideas that can, I'll talk to Freddie about it and then circle back with Claire, because I think you're right, Kat. Freddie, this is a near and dear project. And something that, you know, we should be able to get a lot of value from, because we will own this and we will be able to adjust trails and things on it over, like it will be somehow manipulatable in the version that she provides. So that we can
Okay.
print it in various ways, make it available on our website. It would be beautiful on our kiosk, etc. So if we now have a menu of ideas, it sounds like priorities being connection to town forest, parking, summit, ecology, perhaps a bird, perhaps a flower. Anybody object to that sort of list?
No, but
Yeah, sounds great.
Sounds good to me.
with the
Okay.
bird and the flower and the bee, you know, if possible, my vote would be to share a detail about what it is to help educate at the same time as being
Yeah.
a wonderful artistic piece.
Yeah. It's like, what's the right amount of stuff? All right, let's go to the next item. Unless there's anything else on that, I don't think we need to vote on it. We'd already voted last fiscal when this started, so it's now just about progressing. All right, Brett, you are up.
Okay, what am I up for? I don't have
A
the.
cross group meeting funded by grant.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so this came up, in a SOLF meetings. Basically, there's a grant that we can get. Now, it's not huge, but the state has a grant that basically they'll fund a meeting for groups that have similar interests related to conservation. And so the whole point of it is to take groups like Stewardship and SOLF and Open Space and maybe the trustees and trails or whatever that all might have interests, and they'll fund. It's $700 up to get together for a day. They'll provide food and resources and whatever. We can spend it however we want to get together and discuss, have meetings, have breakout sessions, whatever. It's kind of vague, but you know, I didn't know if that's something we'd be interested in. Yeah,
So
okay.
the funds would be like to pay for a guest speaker or that kind of thing?
The funds
Or
could really,
that-
I'll read in more detail. They could really be for just about anything. The funds could be for coffee and donuts and a lunch if we wanted. But they could be for a speaker. They could be for handouts. You know, if we decided it was going to be like maybe 5 little presentations, each group gave a presentation. It could be for presentation materials. I think it's pretty open-ended, whatever resources you want for that meeting, but it's $700. So it's not like we're going to be calling in, you know, the head of the EPA to give a speech or something, you know.
No, of course not, but
That's a
like
great
for
idea.
$700, you probably could get someone, I mean, for less than that, you could probably get somebody to talk about some particular invasive problem that's, you know, throughout Southborough and or, you know, I don't
Yeah.
know, climate
like it.
change and conservation, something like that.
Right. Yep.
And
Yeah, so I guess the one thing we have to figure out, if we're interested, which it sounds like we are, and then how we might want to, if we want to just let that can drive it through SOLF, or we could kind of try and take the lead, or we could just work with SOLF on it and go from there.
so SOLF is already interested.
We talked about some grants that are available, and I thought that was a cool one, so I said I would look into it. So that's as far as SOLF's interest goes so far. So they're interested because I'm interested, and I'm
So
on
not
the board of
here.
SOLF.
Yeah, that's always the tricky part, like how much stuff can we take on and we be the drivers of?
Right.
Being a small committee that already has a lot of, though I
Right, and
guess in
that's-
the winter, we sort of have less of the kind of labor work than that we do in the warmer months, but that would be a lot of coordination and figuring
Right.
out what is the shared priority. And so personally, I'd like if SOLF took the lead.
I think that makes sense too. I mean, there's more people in SOLF, and they can probably be a little more agile in some ways. Yeah, because there is, I mean, the first step, it is a grant, so there has to be, somebody has to sit down and write. It's not a huge one, but somebody has to write a grant and get it approved and get the money, so.
What's the timeline? Or do you have start, stop, like due date?
I forget, it's not for, I think it's a rolling one, but it's like, we can apply for up to the next 6 months or something like that. I'll dig it up.
But if SOLF applies, then SOLF gets the money and SOLF drives it. SOLF decides who to invite, what the topic is, and whether or not we're consulted. I guess if you're also part of SOLF, then you would be our voice on that. So
Yes.
to me, I would care less about getting donuts and lunch, because I can get my own donuts and my own lunch.
Right.
But I would care
Use it
more
for-
about, like, could it be a training or bringing in some speaker, that kind of thing?
Yep, it definitely
Or
could.
And
like
then
a
we could take, like-
consultant that can point at something and tell us what to do about it. I don't know.
An action plan, exactly.
Yeah, it could be something like that. It couldn't be like hiring somebody for actual work. It is for kind of getting together to coordinate. So it wouldn't be like somebody coming to give advice, but a presentation certainly I think would fit in, stuff like that. So
Oh, I
Yeah, an
see.
expert
So
who
what
could
if,
share knowledge, right?
Yeah.
yeah, sharing knowledge, but not hiring someone like weed that patch.
yeah, we wouldn't be using it for that.
Yes, understood. Understood.
And yeah, so, okay. Because you would need to, if it's a collaboration of entities, you'd probably want letters of support from all of those entities to demonstrate the interest that you would have from all these groups to do this.
Yeah, I think that would be ideal. Like even, just even probably just an email to print out from a representative from each group that says, we're interested, to send along with the grant that says, we'd like to do X, bring in these 2 speakers for our 7 groups, and all these 7 groups are excited about it, or 4 groups or whatever,
That would happen after the grant, or like as part of the grant application that SOLF would put together. Like
would
not a
think,
letter
yeah.
of support.
Well, yeah, I
now.
think so. If we were to just assume for the moment, say SOLF was going to do it and put the grant together, it would be pointless to put it together until they got a handful of groups that were interested first. So stewardship's interested, it sounds like. Trails probably would be, I imagine. So we'd probably want to get a few groups to just give the general thumbs up to be interested
And-
first, and then apply for the grant.
And Conservation Commission, would that be a group too?
I would think
Yeah,
so.
Open space might be as well.
So, so as chair, should I just go ahead and write something that I wouldn't
yeah,
even know
that's-
who to direct it to?
It's a good question.
What, to you?
I think you'll probably get, when you do your research, you'll get a grant description, right? There'll be a description of what it is. And so that might be useful for the entities to see, to be able to frame it. And then you'll probably have to have, you'll probably need to submit like an idea, right? Or
Yeah, we'll
unless-
have to have more specifics.
Yeah.
As
So
opposed to
that-
just, we're going to get together.
Right, and it'll be targeted. So I think, Joyce, then having that kind of information would be. what you
Yeah,
do.
yeah, because like right now I could only write something like, in the spirit of this idea, stewardship would be interested in, being brought together with these other groups for common interests such as kind of thing. But it sounds like that might be a little premature while it's still being researched.
Yeah, so so I'll continue to do some research. Maybe I'll write up like a little 1-pager of here's what it is, here's what we can do, and we can then share that around to the various groups as we try and get buy-in, and then go from there.
Okay, thanks for finding that.
Yeah, where did you find that?
It was Eileen found, she dug up like 6 or 7 different grants, and I was skimming through them. Some of them didn't seem to apply, some weren't related, but this one it was a 1-page description, which was pretty clear. And I was like, oh, it seems, at the very least, it would be cool just to get all the groups together for whether it's a day or a couple hours or whatever, just so everybody can talk to each other and all that. So
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of some shared interest, things like identifying and dealing with spotted lanternfly. Like
Yeah.
it could already be here. You know, there's experts in the state that would come and talk to us about that kind of thing. And that would be a common interest for all of us, or dealing, like how to deal with Japanese knotweed, or so, I don't know, those are the kind of things that I would think all of us might kind of overlap, or trail, like best practices for trails or something.
how do you
No,
build
I
those
think-
stairs, you know?
No, I think I like the idea you're talking about, invasives and knotweed, because I think where trails can come in on that is like, there's a lot of trail, we have a lot of invasives all over our trail. We don't actually, haven't really gotten into that what can we do about that? And there's a lot of opportunity to do that. So I like the focus of keeping it on invasives or conservation specific matters, and how can trails come in and do what needs to happen on our trails on those topics, right? You know, so no need to do trail building work.
Yeah. All right. Management plan. Oh, is there anything else on that, Brett?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you. The next item is management plan updates and needs. This is usually where Freddie will step in and highlight things that need our attention. I'm sorry. Oh, I
You're
saw
getting
the echo. And so was it the weekend or two ago, Brett and I got out on the conservation land and flagged and marked all the things like pussy willow and the Baptisia tinctoria and the native honeysuckle and native rose, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, so that it wouldn't get mowed in the remaining mow that had to happen. And we pulled up the rest of the no spray signs that are all put away now in the shed. So I have not been up there. Yes, Kat.
I have one no spray sign that I
Okay,
have off of Walnut Drive that I just have in my,
Oh. okay. I forgot there was one on that end.
I don't know, what, did someone take one off of Woodland near the town forest? Was that taken down? Okay, sorry.
There was actually 6 on Woodland Road. Because it was both sides. So we got all those. So thank you for getting the one on the other side. I always forget about that. And if you don't want to store it, you can just put it in the shed. So I have not been up to Breakneck since that day, and I do not know if they were supposed to come in and mow the couple of days before, like after we did that and before Thanksgiving. And I don't know if they did finish the mow. Has anyone been up? Yeah, okay. You're muted, Brett, yeah.
Oh yeah, I haven't been able to leave the house in 4 days so
Yeah.
far. So
Yeah, so Freddie probably knows and she's not available. So maybe I'll get up there on the next day or two. I mean, I'm supposed to be isolating right now. I forget when I can stop, but anyway. So that mow should have happened, and I think she had been talking to Chris Politan about some of the invasive work, recutting the stumps on the autumn olive that got mowed down and treating them because it has to be a fresh cut. And Chris was trying to do that. Now, the timing on that is kind of difficult because now we're getting into more and more freezes. So it might, Chris Politan is a terrific resource. There aren't that many people who do the kind of thing that he does that are available to us. And unfortunately, he isn't always the most reliable when he says he'll come through, and then, which is often the case. But so hopefully we'll make some progress on that. And then probably maybe starting in January, I'd really like us to, in terms of management plan, sketch out month by month, what are the things we need to be thinking about? Because winter is great for tree work, for example. And we do have a new guy now who's going to do some tree work for us that Freddie told us about, whose name I forget, who's local and has done a lot of work for, I think, conservation land in Lincoln and stuff. But he, you know, you have to plan that a month or two in advance to line up those things. So when we think about the month by month management plan, it's like, okay, in October or November, you're lining up, your ground is frozen and you're having someone out there limbing apple trees. And then in June and July, you're setting up for your August mow. And in September, you're setting up for your November mow. So like spelling those things out is something, it's always been a little bit elusive. It sounds super simple, but it's been elusive to us because of all the other tasks that we get swallowed up by. So I'm just sort of planting that seed so you all can be thinking. I mean, it isn't really even that many things. It's mow, there's different times of year for different kinds of invasive work, but tree work is generally, you know, late fall and winter when the ground is hard. And then we do an August mow in the grasslands, and then we do a late season mow and everything else. And then other stuff is just almost as needed, but also lining up trail mows and things like that. So I plant that seed with you guys so we'll remember to do that. Is there anything else in the management plan front that you guys are aware of?
I think it would be helpful to understand cost of associated work, like mows cost X, Y, or Z, depending on what you're doing. And so that just for some of us that aren't into those details, we have a sense of cost when these things are executed. Or tree work, you know, what's the hourly rate for a vendor, or Chris Politan's work, he generally charges X dollars, just so, you know, it's kind of all connected. That would help me a little bit.
Yes.
I've been on the committee for many years.
And for many years, we had a really great deal on the mow because the contractor that we used had to do some mitigation with the town of Southborough, and so was owed some money and stuff. So he couldn't really bill us, but that's no longer the case. So we're thrilled that we've had J&J turn out to be a reliable and good contractor for us. They're local. The guy who owns it grew up in town, and he like loves the conservation land. He loves it. He's familiar with working with the town because he has some contracts with DPW for some different things. And it turns out he has one of the few people around who actually has a kind of equipment that's very suitable for us. So
yeah, he's been mowing trails for many years.
Yeah. And like I call him and he calls me back. I mean, you know, like I shouldn't be so grateful for small things, but
why not? It's fun to be grateful. How do you spell Politan? Do you know off the top of your head? For the
I think it's Pollatin.
TIN.
It might be one L. It might be two.
That's going to be two today.
I think it's one L now that I say it out loud.
It's going to be one. Thank you.
So yeah, Freddie is the primary contact for him. So we will have to just put a pin in that because although I intended to catch up with her a little bit in advance of today, I with the holiday and I just haven't been able to. The next thing on is anything else on management plan that someone wants to flag?
Can I, because I won't have access to this recording until later, but want to submit the minutes tonight to you guys, can I just recap quickly? Because I, in the very beginning, was doing some minute taking not associated with our discussion. So basically, under this section, it was mowing needs to be confirmed if it was completed. Is there a specific section that it was referring to? Or is that?
No, it's just the stuff that hadn't been mowed.
Okay. Flagged some species that needed to be avoided.
Yeah, to
And
be preserved.
Source more updates next meeting in January. We sketch out month to month, and then a new vendor to do tree work in J&J Sons. It sounds like that's.
I think so, yeah. Those are, yeah, I didn't include anything on fencing for this agenda. We talk about it a lot, and it's expensive, and I just don't know that we know what a good solution for fencing is right now. So that can also be something we continue to try and figure out. And by fencing, I really am talking about ecology and community gardens. And actually, another thing for the management plan is always sometime in the winter having Isabel come in and talk about community gardens with
Oh,
us.
for the record, we have Sam Stivers as a visitor. Sam, if you want to contribute, just raise your hand.
Hi, Sam. Okay, and then if we're ready to move on to the next agenda item, it was updates on the farm dump. I do not have any. I don't know, Kevin, maybe you do via the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, at the last meeting, Melissa kind of filled us in that they're still working out access to the abutters property over by Harding Botanicals, that house right next to it.
The
And
Fallon House.
yeah, I think the state's going to require more test pits over there. So they're a couple weeks ago, they were still working out the details there. So that's kind of held up on that a little bit. But
Is he a
Okay.
better on board with the testing and stuff?
I think coming around is the sense that I got. So yeah, just wanted to work through the details, and then they have to go back and get the equipment back in to do the test pitting on her property.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a stressful thing if it's your own property, because then what if they find, like, what's that person's liability?
Yeah.
For
Oh, the
us,
homeowner liable for that?
I have no idea.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Right.
I mean, maybe that's why there's been hesitation to allow access. Like, if you don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I just have no idea.
Mhm.
And I believe from the report we had, like, there wasn't certain kinds of things that were getting into the plume and whatnot that.
Yeah, the only thing they found that had to be dealt with was they found asbestos containing materials. So I guess the good news, the bad news is there's asbestos containing materials. I think the good news is that doesn't travel through groundwater or anything like that. So it's really stays put. So it'll be easier to clean up, I think.
Right.
Was the
And
sense I
this,
got.
and if I remember correctly, the state was going to report back to the town on what that cleanup might encompass or have to look like. And it's at the stage when there's going to be any kind of restoration that I think we would want to step in and make sure, there could be grants or whatnot, but make sure native plants and the kind of things that we've been working to conserve and care about get reflected in whatever that is, and that we would have some say. But I guess it's mostly kind of status quo.
Right now, yeah. Yeah, they're still working through the state, and then the state's going to finally come back and tell us what we need to do. Yeah.
All right, so Kevin, thanks for being a liaison to keep us in the loop on that from your role on Conservation Commission. And of course, Melissa shares stuff with us as well, which we appreciate. I don't have any other items. Is there anything else someone else wanted to flag? I will flag, I guess there's one thing I would flag. So
Oh,
we're
yes.
on the cusp of December, gets to be a busy time for people. I don't know if we want to aim to have a December meeting or aim for January. I'm around, so it's either way.
I'm around if you think it would be useful and we need a meeting to talk about the map. And we just had a focused meeting for the map as a way of keeping that moving forward. And Freddie wanted, was available to participate in that. That might be an option.
Oh, that's a good idea, like just on the map. Or, and
then
maybe a
the-
little bit of the management stuff we didn't catch up on because she's not here.
And there's one thing that I don't know if you typically participate in the annual updates, Joyce, for the stewardship specific committee, because each year, all the committees are submitting their annual updates, and that gets included in, it's the annual report, I think, that the town prints out.
I've submitted a long time ago, like years ago.
It might be something, it's not a big deal. It could be a paragraph, it could be a half page, it could be a page to highlight what the stewardship committee does, because there's so much work that the committee does that goes unnoticed. And that is one way to help keep that in front of people. No, not everyone's going to read it, but Trails started doing that a couple years ago. And it's just a thing, another way of getting it in front of just a certain group.
It's done on the calendar year basis?
Typically because, I never really thought of that, but I've always done it on a calendar year basis because it's the end of the year and I was asked to present accomplishments or such for the year. So it could be whatever period of time you select that you present, right? But I would say there's a deadline in December sometime, and the 17th comes to mind, but that's probably a random number from a few years ago. And I don't know who, you could talk to Melissa about,
Okay,
because I think this Conservation Commission might have a section.
Yeah, she had a draft at her last meeting that we voted on. So
okay,
good.
so,
she's way ahead of the curve on that for
Yeah,
well,
conservation.
I'm behind the curve, so maybe I'll
you have
talk to
plenty of time, I
Melissa
think.
and draft something. Would people be amenable to a short meeting in December?
It's fine with me. All right.
Yeah.
Is there any, it's hard to pin down a
The
date.
13th, please don't do it on the 13th. I've got two
Other
meetings.
than the 13th.
That's just my preference.
It's the only day I have open, so it's
Is it really?
It's,
Maybe.
Yeah.
And the 7th,
Joking.
I'm also obligated on the 7th with a master plan implementation meeting. So if you care to know those details, that's detail. I should-
Okay, I'll see if I can do something and have a draft of something we could submit, and then maybe we could get Freddie's input on the map and touch base on a couple of things we weren't able to do. But I don't think we needed a vote or anything on this shed, because that we had the vote last time and that's just proceeding. So okay. Anything else from anyone?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn I make the motion to adjourn at 7:43.
So moved. Oh, wait, you make the motion, seconded.
All in favor? Brett, Kevin,
yes.
Cap,
Yes.
and myself, I, so the motion passes. I hope you all have a great weekend, and that I didn't even get to say before, I hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
Thanks, you too.
Right.
Get out of
Bye.
quarantine
Talk to you
soon.
later.
Yeah. So.
Bye-bye.
Bye.